Welcome back, everybody, to Bourbon and Breakthroughs. I'm your host, Chris Goodman, and today I have my friend Karla Green. Thank you so much, Karla, for taking time away from the bar and everything else, the new puppy in your life, your husband, everything you got going on to be on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Don't thank me yet. Let's see how this goes.
Fair enough.
If you didn't already scroll through the show notes and check out Karla's bio, or if you don't know her from many of the media placements she's had, or like me, if you have known her for a while, but also know her from her work at Watch Hill Proper, Karla's a nationally recognized award-winning mixologist who has dedicated more than 20 years to different aspects of the hospitality industry. Does it feel like it's been that long, Karla?
Oh, yes. Yes, it does.
I thought you were going to say depends on the week.
No, sir.
We're going into Derby season here in Kentucky, which is the maddest, craziest time of year. The entire city shuts down for 2.5, 3 weeks, all for about 2.5 minutes of horse racing. But we're not gathered here today to talk about the Derby. We're here to talk about Karla. So Karla has management, leadership, and startup experience with a strong focus on bar and beverage menu design. She specializes in building creative drink recipes and memorable menus, along with educational labs, training, and testing materials for staff. And this is how I've come to appreciate Karla's expertise. There is definitely a scientific element to the way she approaches cocktails and making them. It's not haphazard at all. Everything is very specifically, let's say, chosen and calibrated. Is that a fair way to put that?
I like it. I'm going to steal it.
Yeah, perfect. She's been featured, like I said, in many media outlets. You've probably seen her in Bourbon Plus, Today's Woman, 750, American Whiskey Magazine, which if you're watching the YouTube video or anything on social media, you can go out and grab this copy right here. Some celebrities on the front who are starting a brand. And then back on page 43, a whole interview with Karla. Other places, American Dream TV and numerous local morning TV shows celebrating American whiskey and cocktails. Karla has also collaborated with brands that you might know. You've probably seen these on the shelves in your favorite liquor store. Kentucky's Peerless, Barrel Craft Spirits, the entire Diageo portfolio, Deep Eddy, and DrinkWorks. And this is part of why I'm really excited to have her on now. Her recent career highlights include successfully launching Heaven Hill's first 2 visitor center bars, Evan Williams Bourbon Experience just a couple years ago, and Five Brothers Bar in 2021. And in March of 2022, alongside other passionate bourbon lovers, she helped develop and design the world's largest American whiskey bar, which happens to be called Watch Hill Proper, which happens to be a place I like to hang out. And they have, correct me if I'm wrong, 1,700 American whiskeys and counting.
I'm counting.
And counting. As if 1,000 just wasn't enough. We had to go for closer to 2. So that was a long way to get there. Again, Karla, thanks for being on. And today, we are sponsored by something that I am super excited to get into. It's called Hemingway Rye, and it is a first edition that we're trying today. Karla, would you take us through a couple of, you've been in the industry for longer than anybody else I've interviewed. So the way I see this bottle, the way I appreciate this bottle is totally different than somebody who's been, an industry veteran for 20 years. What are the first things that stand out to you when you just pick up the bottle?
I mean, I already drank it with my eyes with it sitting on the shelf. So having it in my hand just feels amazing. I just love the attention to detail. And I got a chance to speak with the marketing director, Forrest, who was so kind to provide the bottles. And he broke down the bottle design for me. But being an English major, I loved Ernest Hemingway in high school, and I didn't get to study him so much in college. I got William Faulkner for my capstone, and I'll just say I wasn't exactly thrilled with that choice, but I didn't have an option. But just looking at, even the rye is, I guess, 1950s style typewriter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's stunning. And it comes in this box too. So it's like a celebration of Hemingway, and just all the little details were so just beautifully implemented.
Little details is the best way to put it, because I look at this and I'm like, all right, the tag, a lot of bourbon bottles these days come with some kind of tag and some general information. And a lot of times it's like, just go follow us on social media. This one has a lot of care put into it. 94% Indiana rye, 6% Kentucky rye. And in this first edition, they really taken time to break out the tasting notes, which they say are rich caramel and brown sugar, complemented by back notes of soft rye and vanilla. On the palate, ripe cherry booms. Ripe cherry booms. It took me a minute. Through toasted oak, highlighted by creamy caramel and cinnamon, a rich, round mouthfeel bursts with fruit flavor, leading into a soft, sweet, and warm finish. It's things like this that make me appreciate how much care went into blending this. But then I start reading about the folks that put it together. And yes, thank you to Forrest for providing the bottles to us, because I don't know how we would have gotten this without his help. But check this out for everybody who wants to find a bottle of this. Inside this little tag, it says, just like Hemingway's storied adventures, rye can be grown and found around the world, delivering the largest variety of region-specific flavors. In Hemingway terms, rye is damn hard to make. To craft this one-of-a-kind spirit, seventh-generation master distiller Ron Call teamed up with his sons, Clayton Call, and eighth-generation master distiller Jacob Call to hand-source, blend, and finish the highest quality straight rye whiskeys in today's market. The result is a captivating cross between the signature spice of Jacob Call's own Kentucky Straight 4-year-old high rye and 9-year-old Indiana Straight rye, finished with the sweetness and softness of their own rum-seasoned Oloroso sherry casks. Again, long way to get there, but wow, what a way to appreciate what we're about to open. 50% alcohol, so 100 proof. But the color on this was the first thing, Karla, that stood out to me. Just this like cognac color. So cool. All right, let's get into it. Hey, what's up? This is Chris Goodman, and we'll be back to your episode in about 45 seconds. Listen, if you're ready to take your life and your business up to your next level of success, freedom, fulfillment, fun, all of it, you need the help of a top coach. All the best in the world at anything have a great coach in their corner. They can help you identify your goals, develop a plan to achieve them, give you accountability, give you support, give you guidance all along your way up to the top. Now, look, most coaches are created equally, we'll say. They don't perform equally, however. So if you want to get the most out of your coaching, you need to work with somebody who has a proven track record of success. And that's where I come in. I have over 15,000 hours of coaching people just like you. And after coaching countless entrepreneurs, CEOs, executives, influencers, real estate agents, you name it, I've probably coached them. I can do the same for you. So what are you waiting for? Go ahead and contact me. Go to goodmancoachinginc.com. That's goodmancoachinginc.com. Fill out the quick application, and let's talk about coaching you to your goals. Now let's get back to the episode. Ready? Ooh, it was a quiet cork. Sometimes they really squeak. So for other guests who are not industry veterans, I've taught them what a Kentucky Chew is. Would you walk me through, like, when you first get a hold of something brand new, do you have a protocol that you use to taste it?
So I typically will pour it out. First, I like to smell the bottle first. I like to smell the cork. When I nose it, I keep my lips parted because it allows the high octane vapors to go through your airways. We keep our mouths closed, as you might in wine. It kind of traps some of those fumes, and you can have very quickly you can overpower your ability to smell. And we drink with our nose first before it touches our palate. It's a weird way of saying it, but basically whatever we smell is going to be translated. We're going to be anticipating to taste these flavors before we even taste them. So I like to just sit with it and nose it a little bit before even tasting it. And then I'll usually, when nosing it, I'll start it, kind of closer to my chest and see if I can pick up any smells coming, and then bring it a little bit closer, and then even a little bit closer. And so you're kind of prepping your nose to smell high proof or higher proof products. You can swirl it a little bit. I know it's really fun to do. It's almost like there's that meme that I keep seeing with grilling, and it's the little tongs, and every time you pick up tongs, you just have to like, you know what I mean?
Right? Yeah.
It's not official until you snap them a couple times. And it's the same, I think, with swirling. Anyhow. So yeah, swirl it, look at it, and then slowly taste it. The Kentucky Chew comes a little bit after. I think after I get my palate acclimated to whatever it is I'm tasting, that Kentucky Chew kind of comes in halfway between my actual tasting.
You're the first person I've ever talked to that's the second or third step, instead of like just go straight for the Kentucky Chews. And for everybody listening, if you don't know what that is, it's just simply you put a few drops on your tongue and you roll it around in your palate to acclimate. Actually, I should let you describe.
Well, maybe everyone's Kentucky Chew is different. This is kind of, for me, I'm such a serial taster with things, from spirits first to cocktails to even wine. It's like I like to taste just little sips of it. For me, the chew is a little bit of a heavier sip than when I'm just kind of working my palate into it. So I take my Kentucky Chew 2 or 3 sips after I have introduced myself, if that makes sense.
I'm excited. I'm ready to try it. Wow. Okay, I want to get your thoughts first.
Yes, it's that delightful. I'm just a sucker for finished anything. Mm-hmm. Like I want to see what you can do with something. I want to see it evolve into something else. So I'm always a sucker for finished whiskeys or other spirits. I suppose for me, the major flavors coming through on this is like a root beer float. You get that creaminess, kind of cream soda, kind of root beer. Definitely a very warm finish on the end. The inside of my lips are very tingly, which can be a good thing. Oh, yes, I enjoy it. Nothing too fancy on my end. I love this. I loved it from the first time I got a chance to try it. They were very generous to me late last year and sent me a beautifully curated sample box that I got to just enjoy. And the packaging was perfect, and it came with a little journal, and I just geeked out over it. So
well, that's a good point.
I've been in love with it since they first sent me that sample. And I'm just very excited to have it.
I'm excited for people to explore this, because I see on the back they have a library card.
Yeah.
It's clearly all an homage to Hemingway. And this literally has lines on it where you can write down and capture the date that you opened it, who you shared it with, other times you might have opened this to celebrate something, or even just to have a glass with a friend. And their hashtag is pour your story. Like, how brilliant is that? Plus here's what really surprises me. That's great. I'll have to write on mine here in a minute. The nose and the flavor to me are two completely different animals. Like, it smells so like baking spices and almost like that raisin smell that you get out of rum in the nose there. And then when you go in for your first taste, like it drinks like a sherry almost, to me anyway, or at least a scotch, and just finishes kind of dry at first. And then you get slammed with that peppery rye bite. It, like you said, the mouth tingling, and that's when the other flavors of that rum finish start to come through. for me anyway. That's where I was like, oh, loads of vanilla, but it's not at all sweet or you don't get that like artificial sweetener taste that you do with some finished spirits.
Mm-hmm.
It's a purist rye, I think, in all senses, but it's got some real character with the finish on it. I know a lot of people are going to be jealous because they're going to go try to find this, and they're like, "How the hell did you all get a bottle of this?"
Yes, that was I mean, it's pretty exclusive, so it's nice that we were able to get in when we could. Do you ever add water to yours?
Actually, I have some right here for that very reason. Did you already go ahead?
I did. I think adding just a little bit of water to it really helps soften. It becomes like plush on the palate.
Well, it definitely made it more approachable. So yeah, this might not be the first thing somebody's going to reach for if you're just getting into bourbon. At 100 proof, it packs a little bit of a punch if you're not used to that.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that I would put in front of friends who are new to bourbon or new to any kind of spirit, especially neat, and it might knock them back a little bit. So yeah, water, maybe an ice cube in the beginning to check it out. Well, let's talk about you for a while, unless you have any other thoughts on the bottle, the spirit itself. Of course, we're going to keep drinking while we.
Yes, yes,
Right.
absolutely. We'll watch it evolve as we discuss.
I was teasing one of our last guests that our podcast really needs to come with a disclaimer. You need to eat a hamburger before the show because Chris is probably going to have you drink 2 or 3 drinks throughout the show.
Well, I ate my weight in peanut M&Ms today, so I think I can handle it.
Excellent. You're in good shape then. Well, let's talk about being creative director at Watch Hill proper. For everybody who has not seen photos of the bar, go down, click in the show notes where it says Watch Hill proper, and check out the lounge. Check out the extensive, like we said, 1,700 plus bottles of American whiskey and counting. I don't even know how many pages the whiskey list is at this point. I'm guessing 75, 85 pages, something like that. And when I say pages, I mean the font is like size 6 font, right? It's tiny. That's how much there is to choose from there. It is a field day for anybody like me who loves to explore bourbon, just sample things here and there, try some crazy things that you might not want to buy a $500 bottle of, but you want to taste and see if it's something you'd like to get into later on. So, behind the scenes, you've been there all along working on design, curating the entire cocktail list, which is also extensive, and being an integral part of this. What I'm really curious about is you just celebrated your 1-year anniversary of opening Watch Hill. At this point, what has been your biggest breakthrough as an expert in this industry going through this process over the last year?
Man, that's a tough question. So breakthrough, can you define that a little bit more in what
How about,
context?
was there a particular moment that started to make you realize, okay, this is something different and things are going to be different from here on out?
Well, let's see. I don't think I've had that epiphany yet, to be quite fair, and honest and transparent. But I will say that I think my approach to education and training the staff who continue to churn out the drinks, like just building that relationship with them and teaching them the fine, how to like look at something a little bit closer, like be more, how to critically think in situations, like even recipes. I think a lot of us, especially myself, I came up just as actually a bowling alley bartender is where I got my start. So that was like 18 selling shots of apple pucker. Like, I have not been this person from the get-go. So all that is, we have staff from different backgrounds, and to produce materials for them that start to have them think differently on how to build cocktails, how to make them, what I'm asking from them, and then to consistently recreate those drinks is like that. I think has been my most rewarding aspect of it, and I'm seeing them evolve, which makes me feel like there's something right that I must be doing. There's plenty wrong, I'm sure, that I'm doing, and they have a laundry list, but I'm just so proud of them for like sticking with me. Several of them have been on since day one too, from our 1 year anniversary. So we brought them on, want to say like mid-February to early March is when we did our hiring. And then we had a 2-week whiskey school before we opened, and they've been on since. So just over a year. And that is unheard of in the hospitality industry. Most people, it's just given that, you stay at a place 3 months and then you go pursue whatever the next biggest thing is or whatever. So that to me has been something that has encouraged me to keep pushing.
You're really onto something, especially in this post-pandemic era where the hospitality industry has just been decimated and it's hard to find really great help and keep them. So I have 2 questions. The first one is, how do you maintain the integrity of your recipes throughout all the different people making them, so that every guest that orders, a cocktail, like your riff on a Sazerac is probably my favorite cocktail in Louisville. How do you make sure that is made the same way every time for any guest that comes in, even though, you're not even at the bar very much anymore?
So I have to thank a couple of people who were on the staff before. They're no longer with the organization, but in my experience of bartending, I had very little to rely on. I mean, I didn't have a whole lot of recipes. It was like you followed someone for 2 days, they told you the specs, you had to remember them, kind of thing. And so when I had my recipes and everything, and I provided it to them, but not everyone learns the same way. And so one of my colleagues gave like a spec sheet that he had been exposed to at some point, like just a different formatting style. So I took that and I just used it as a template, but then through each menu, I've really started to fine tune it. Like the thing is color coded now, and it's got like, it's very specific on measurements. It has the method, the build. I mean, this is something that is like, every time we change a menu, I get a little bit excited, also a little frustrated that it gives me an opportunity to just keep chiseling away at this kind of logistical guide. The other thing that I do too is we have monthly labs, twice, 3 times a month, maybe we'll meet up on a Monday for 6 hours and we do the prep together. So everyone's there and they can, kind of talk shop about methodologies and strategy and, how do you, because we have over 30 cocktails on our menu. And so I have an unfair advantage in that I have this like running kind of photographic memory of where like every little single thing lives in the restaurant, where like, they're on the front lines and they're dealing with guests, but like the behind the scenes is pretty much ingrained in my skull. Like I lose sleep at night over like, oh my God, where are the honey dippers, like that kind of thing. So I really tried to.
What's a honey dipper? I don't even know.
Exactly, right? Like what the hell is she doing now? No, we have on the Gold Rush this little honey dipper that we send out with the cocktail. So it's like, I might get a ping at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night, like 86 honey dipper, we're out of this, or I can't find them. And then my brain has to like think about where exactly I squirreled it away, kind of thing. But all that to say is like, I've really just fine-tuned my own organizational approaches to running the bar. And, with the drinks, the measurements are very specific, and I train them when we onboard them, I work with them on their stirring and their shaking and their measuring. And it's just a constant, like every day is a training day there. Like they never know what I'm going to throw at them. On top of the drinks they have to know, which they're quizzed on. We also have private events that request different cocktails at different batches and different, so it's just like, they're so resilient. So I'm really excited. And I think I have to remind myself to stay resilient too, because that trickles down, and they'll see my energy. They'll know if like I'm depleted, and just like I know when they're depleted, and when I can push them a little bit further, and when I need to like step away. So I would say in general, to summarize, the seeing them transform into like true kind of crafty bartenders, mixologists, whatever you want to call them, and really enjoy the job that they have like that. That is very, very rewarding.
You said something to me that I think about in coaching. A lot of times this saying comes up: predictable input equals predictable output. And it's just a simple way to say, like, if I order a McDonald's here in Louisville, it's going to be pretty much the same hamburger you're going to get at a McDonald's in Chicago, right? Because the input is so predictable. You referenced your binder and the color coding, and like it's that specific that the output has to be predictable. When you think about the challenges you've had getting to that point, how have you innovated to keep the input so predictable? Because what I'm getting at is a lot of business owners are like, I wish I could get my team, in your case, the mixologists, but I wish I could get my team to be that regimented. Like, what has come up for you, and how have you learned to deal with that over time?
I'm accessible to them. So I am a perfectionist, and I have to literally tell myself every day when I wake up, get out of your own way. You're human. You make mistakes all the time. And I think this last round with our menus, it's like once you laminate something, okay, it's done. It is done. I've laminated it. It won't even, break down in a nuclear war, but then I'll find a typo. And the English major in me is like, oh, no, I gotta go back. I gotta relaminate, and then I'll find another one and another one. And so they see me have this meltdown. It I think demonstrates to them that mistakes happen all the time, and it's just getting up every time you fall down. And even if something as tiny as a typo on a spec sheet, that might knock me down, but it doesn't take me long to get back up. And so for me, I think the consistency there and the expectation, but also now that we've determined our signature cocktails, and so we have a year's worth of data that we've looked at, and we've seen what cocktails really, really sell, and kind of what has fallen off or maybe not has been as popular. We've established those now. So now we have 5 to 10 that we can rotate, and the bartenders who are consistently showing up for my cocktails and my recipes, I want them to have their own cocktails on the menu too. I want them to take ownership. I've been a huge advocate of extreme ownership with everything, and again, it's probably to my own demise, but I believe that you should hold yourself accountable, and you should you shouldn't shit on yourself, but it would behoove you to hold yourself accountable for your actions, and to just take ownership of anything in general. And so I've always come into any place I've ever bartended at and treated it as if it was my own place. Maybe someday I will have a place of my own. I don't know, but it's just that like overachieving kind of mentality that I've taken on in my adulthood, that I think is setting an example for them. But also, bartenders we're a creative lot, and I think I really flourished in places that allowed me to put drinks on the menu. I could talk to the guests about my own creation, and it became a very empowering thing for me. And so now that we've established the majority of the drinks, that we're going to start featuring other bartenders and their own creations. So I'm very excited for that.
You mentioned a couple of things right there that are key indicators that you're growth oriented. Like, you like the challenge, you don't stay down long. When you fail, you figure it out, you move on. You've got this perfectionist side too, though, where it's like, I'm going to fail, but I'm also really working hard to get it right. So I'm going somewhere with this. How many cocktails will you all serve in a given busy evening, like a Friday or Saturday?
Oh man. Well, we have kind of become an old-fashioned bar that's just, old fashions have been the most popular drink
Mhm.
if not the second most popular drink, probably for the last decade, it seems. And so that's the first thing I think people are going to order from us. It's like the same as going into a burger joint, or going into any restaurant. You're curious about what does their Bloody Mary taste like? What does their burger taste like? What does their old fashioned taste like? Kind of thing. And so we sell by far more of those than anything else. But I would say at least 200 drinks go out a night, cocktail wise. Yeah.
And that's without the single pours, the just the folks like us that want to come in and taste the Hemingway neat first. So let's call it 200. What does the team have going through their mind if somebody sends a drink back and they're like, this one wasn't made right? I had it when Karla first put it on the menu and this isn't right. Like, how do you train them? Because I'm also asking for all the business owners who are listening, like, how do you train your team to deal with failure, especially when there's a lot you're getting tons of reps, 200 a night. So it's not like there's only 2 ingredients in these cocktails. Some of them have 6, 7 ingredients. And every little one, each measurement, if it's off even by a few drops, can affect the balance of the cocktail. So how do you teach them to deal with that?
So I do encourage straw testing. I've done that for wherever bars would let me. That has really helped train my palate. So it's just a constant work in progress. I actually ask them to tell me if any drinks go back. Like, I'm not there at night. I don't bartend anymore, so it's a struggle. There's part of this, like, I have to relinquish some of that, like, need to know every single drink that goes out. I mean, at the end of the day, it's how many drinks were returned, which, if they're telling me the truth, not very many. I think there was a couple instances where, like, maybe someone's froth was more frothier than the other bartenders, and so they request I don't know, an egg white sour from so and so instead of the other person, and so that has happened on occasion. But yeah, like, I really don't get too many go backs, if you will. But also too, it's like I try to, when I do find out, like, I just get the details, like what was the context behind that. And they're like, well, they just didn't care for it. Or yeah, I mean, I don't ever hold them responsible for it. I kind of hold myself responsible for it, because maybe I'm not training them how to, like, stir it or shake it as much, or maybe their measurement was wrong. Maybe got to work on their measurement skills or something like that. So I'm kind of like, no bartender ever wants to have their drink go back, because it's partly on them too. So it's just being transparent and working from it.
So, one of the things I'm fascinated with is like the intersection of business and personal growth. And then we have things that are just fun for us. Like, that's why I introduced bourbon into this podcast, because I was like, this is a fun way to, like, see that things can cross over. It's not either or, right? It's not personal growth or business, or we're talking about business or bourbon, or we're talking about leadership or bourbon. Like, it can all be blended together. But you said a couple of things that I think are really brilliant. Number one, the team is self-reporting. You're not there micromanaging, and you're not, making them, check boxes while they're, running around behind the bar. They straw test, which in my language I heard as inspect what you expect. Like, you have to inspect what you are delivering. Otherwise, you're just guessing that it's right. You're just hoping that it's right. So you're teaching them to inspect what they expect. I think that's really cool. You said get the details. Most high-powered managers or leaders would jump right into, like, you did this wrong, or why has this drink come back 3 times this week? What are you doing wrong? And you're like, no, get the details. Like, figure out. What I heard was get curious first. And I don't know if that's just you learn that the hard way after 20 years of, like, dealing with people constantly. But that ability to slow down and get the details, I think, helps you do number 4, which really brings it all together, which is hold yourself responsible first. Because if you get the details and they're like, look, I made it exactly how your binder said to, you go, oh shit, that's on me. Right. Any thoughts on that?
No, you're right. Some bartenders don't imbibe, and I really admire them for that. So they have to be on, those bartenders have to be on point. If they're not going to straw test, then they need to be fully engaged. And we've got different types of bartenders. We have like hardcore service well bartenders who like don't want to interact with guests. They just want to like pound out the drinks to perfection. And I see a lot of myself in that type of bartender. It's like I'm very focused, I'm hyper focused on, getting things right. And then you've got bartenders who are more, socially inclined, where they have to multitask and they may be making 4 or 5 very complicated drinks at a time and holding a conversation with, our members or, any walking guests. Just so it's like, it's a delicate balance of being able to have, number one, the ability to quality control. Like some bars won't allow that. And then I think the funniest thing is, I hear some reviews sometimes, not from Watch Hill proper, but just like, I don't know, running Yelp reviews on different restaurants. Like they straw tested my drink and that was my cocktail. Like they're getting drunk off a drink you order. Like, no, they're actually like, you want your bartender to straw test and make sure everything is perfect. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I think to your point is like, people are coming into that, they love bartending. They're coming in to make something. They're creators, they're artists. Nobody ever wants to be like, too roughed up by management when they do something wrong. I think sometimes I even have to think if my messaging was the right thing. And I'm kind of doing this blindly. I read a lot and I try to like, I'm just a very introspective person. And so for me, I might reconsider a conversation I had with an employee. Man, did I use the right language? Or, so, and I always ask them, does this make sense? And it's not because I'm trying to like, sometimes I feel like it sounds like I'm talking at them or down to them, like they don't understand. It's literally me like, no, is my message clear? Like, am I making sense?
Is the language I'm using clear? Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not understanding, then there's going to be a communication breakdown. And my minor was in communications, and it is so, so important to be able to speak directly to someone without having them take it personally. And that is probably one of the hardest lessons that I've continued to learn is don't integrate it into your being. Take it as surface level, recommendation and take it and move on. Like it's for their best interest, for my own interest to like look at something for that way. So I'm still kind of like learning that from a leadership perspective, is like try not to internalize things so much and just try to focus on having that other person coming from a good place instead of one that's micromanaging or something like that.
Yeah. My wife and I were talking about this last night, that there is a temptation to bring our ego into business, especially when you become really great at what you do, right? Because it's so easy to make this to lose the distinction between you're doing something great and you are great, right? Like that you are the best bartender in the Midwest, or like, like you've won so many big competitions that it would be easy for you to have a big head, a big ego about it. So how do you, what ways have you found that may especially be useful to other people to keep that ego in check and stay like right where, to meet the person you're leading right where they are?
I've never really been that ego-driven person. Like in my personal life, I spend a lot of time reading and like writing and meditating, and I'm spend a lot of time on Zooms with my church and like those kind of things. And so I compartmentalize. One of the owners, he cracks me up. He tells everyone, "Oh, she's undefeated," which is like a bold-faced lie. And he doesn't mean to lie about it, right? He's just like, it's a giant hyperbole. But like, I don't have the desire to be the world's best anything. You know what I mean? Like, and that sounds like really what's the word I'm looking for? Like unmotivated, but it's all subjective. Drinking is a subjective sport. This life is subjective. Like, there's no way that I could ever possibly attain that type of like title, even because even when you do get granted some award or win some competition, you're going to fall off your pedestal. So my approach is never put yourself on it to begin with. You can be proud of your accomplishments. You can be ambitious with them, and you can continue to apply for things and do, like, I'm all about open to experience. And so for me, I'm so used to getting rejected that like I'm not even afraid of it anymore. I just do it because it sounds interesting. I want the experience, or this all of a sudden is curious to me. I want to go pursue this. Which is one of the reasons why hospitality has kind of worked out for me in my career, is because I've always been kind of like, yes, what's the next big thing? What's the next big challenge? But I'm not there to like reap the first place reward or award. I'm there really to just like get a new perspective on something. So yeah, it sounds like I'm the most okayest mixologist out there, and I'm okay with that. Honestly, I'm not really here to compete with anyone. There's so many talented people in the city who are just as ambitious, and you know, it's like everyone can shine. So that's kind of where I have taken my career.
I love it. You said hyperbole earlier, and that's what I thought of. I was like, she's so modest, but at the same time, we'll talk out of the other side of our mouth and we'll say, but you just made it into the Cannes Film Festival, being featured in I'm going to be vague on the details because I don't know how much the editor wants to release just yet. But I think it's safe to say that it features women in the whiskey industry who are breaking through lots of barriers that have been there for hundreds of years. And that's not something that just anybody can do. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was just thrilled to be a part of it. Honestly, I don't have a major role other than, you know, kind of chatting it up with another um, principal of the documentary. I love to celebrate Kentucky and Kentucky history on the menu, and I'm very, you know, storytelling kind of driven when I create my cocktails. I like to name them and create kind of a narrative around them, all celebrating Kentucky or, you know, America in general, because it's just an American whiskey bar. So I do have a local legend on there, and I created a Black Manhattan around her. She had recommended an Amaro that I had never used before or tasted, and I paired it with one of our first barrel picks. It was our Nulu toasted rye, and together it actually just created this amazing Black Manhattan recipe. So I put it on the menu. I kind of named it cheekily after her. And then they were filming there at Watch Hill because, I mean, we're just being sought after for just the aesthetics alone. I mean, it's simply stunning in there. And then the director asked if, you know, I would be there because in the documentary, the principal mentions, oh, you know, I have a cocktail named after me. So then they're like, oh, well, who's the bartender? Can we meet her? Will she be there? So I was like, yeah. So yeah, I make the drink. You know, it was a good time for sure. So I'm excited and like, hey, a little cameo added to my resume.
Well, you know, what's fun is English communications got you into the scene in a way, at least it was your background there. And then there you are using that training, using that background to develop a story around a cocktail that the cocktail alone is amazing. And I'm not just saying that. I first discovered Black Manhattans when we lived in Manhattan Beach. And there's this little place in Hermosa Beach right down the road. It's called Steak and Whiskey. And I took my wife there on her birthday, and I surprised her, and she's walking up and she's like, what the hell? You're taking me to a steak and whiskey. This is like your birthday, not my birthday. But I was like, just trust me. So we go in, and easily one of the best steaks in LA, but we discovered this Black Manhattan that was on the menu, and I'd never tried one before. And they made theirs with a classic rye and then Averna, Amaro. And I was blown away. I was like, I love this. This is amazing. I rarely see them anywhere else. And then you put yours on the menu, and it blew the doors off the one I had in California. It's much more balanced, and it's much more, I think, thought through in terms of how those flavors play into each other. So I'm bringing this back to, you bring an element of thoughtfulness, of storytelling, of care to everything you create. Is there ever conflict between like you have to put something new on the menu every 3 to 4 months? And do you ever find it's like it's hard to hit that balance of I'm going to tell a story, I'm going to do something creative, it's going to taste great, and I'm out of ideas?
Yeah, it's like writer's block, honestly. And sometimes the thing, like, I have different versions of the same concept that I work on. And anytime I create a new spec, let me just say this, that I am consider myself very blessed to be able to work for the owners who allow me free reign when it comes to that. I'm always mindful. I'm choosing responsible spirits. I'm not necessarily making anything with the rarest bottle in the world. But they let me explore that. They let me train my palate because there's an element of trust there. They know that I'm gonna deliver something to them that will be well received. So it's like, yeah, just do what you do, go off and like if you mess up, we'll tell you kind of thing. And so I'm really like, I've got a really good thing going there because of that. But there is writer's block, and I throw myself into a rabbit hole. I end up just like finding, like, the name is very important to me. There's been cocktails that I've named that have not hit, which the cocktail was delicious, but you have to consider, does the guest know how to pronounce it? Do they understand the reference? If you have a server who maybe isn't applying the knowledge given to them, or they're not familiar, maybe they're new or whatever, they might go for the easy cocktail that's the most expensive on the menu, as opposed to like spending time with the guests and really kind of chewing on the thought behind each drink. Which, to be fair, if you've got 30 on there and you've got 6 tables, and it's kind of like you have to kind of play your cards when you have them. But all that to say is, yes, writer's block is a thing. I always think that this is my shittiest creation. And I beat myself up, and then it's weird. All of a sudden, the one, like, and I'm sorry if there's any redheads listening, but the one redheaded stepchild of my cocktail list all of a sudden becomes like the most popular one for the season. And I'm like, how did that happen? I did not, I had you bet like second to last. So yeah, it's just, it's fun. It's drinkable art to me. It's how I've decided to show up in the world as, I'm a creator by nature. Like, that's just kind of who I've been my whole life, is just needing to create. I destroy a lot to get through that process. Destroy to create has kind of been my motto for a while, but yeah, I always end up in a pretty good spot. And like I said, taste is subjective. So it's easy I tell the bartenders that, straw test, because if you're missing an ingredient, you'll be able to pick it up. You can always course correct. If it's too tart, or not sweet enough, you can always, slightly adjust it for them, so you don't have to dump it down the drain and start over. But yes, so I don't know if that answered your question, but that's kind of where I landed.
I think you did. And
Okay.
my favorite part was the destroy to create,
Yeah.
because, I coach a lot of people in business who are perfectionists. It's how they got to the top of their game, or they came to own the business because they're like, we're going to do this right. And there is an element of control freak, in most of these people. But I love the idea of you have to destroy to create something new. You have to break something down, or at least break through. And that's what I'm really curious about is, 20 years to this point alone, and you're nowhere near the end of your career. So if we were to destroy everything now and you were going to create something new or break through something new, what would you want it to be?
Uh,
And I'm going to pour a little more while you taste,
yeah,
because I am
please.
fascinated with this.
I don't honestly, like, I enjoy the organic process. I am not, to my own, I guess, maybe it's a character flaw, but because I am so introverted, I very socially awkward, and I'm not the shameless self-promoter that I guess I'm supposed to be in this industry. So for me, I kind of feel like what is for me will come to me. Like, there's an element of, yes, being motivated and ambitious, but then there's also that point where you break beyond ambition, and you maybe like to your own detriment, destroy relationships because you're too pushy of a person, or, maybe like, I don't know, like this is just me thinking I would rather be safe and comfortable with where I'm at and let things fall into my lap. Everything kind of happens for a reason kind of vibe. So I don't have it pictured where I'm going with my career. Honestly, I've kind of hit a peak. I mean, it's too late to like change industries now. Like everyone's like, oh, you're in hospitality for 20 years. Like, yeah, I mean, it's ageism to a certain degree. And so, yeah, am I going to be like, maybe I'm going to be that like 65-year-old bartender. Maybe I'll just like come full circle and end up working in a bowling alley and be perfectly fine and make way more money than I ever have.
What if I end up interviewing you in like 20 years and you're like, I sold 20 shots of apple puckers at a bowling alley yesterday.
Made $100. Yeah, like that's totally happened to me. So yeah, there's that. Well, I don't know. I'm open. I'm open to collaborate.
That's what I was going to say. That I hear an openness, and what I really hear is a sense of trust that you trust this is going to work out. And that's not what a lot of people who have to be precise in their work do. There's almost this angling to control and create an outcome and this stranglehold on your life rather than trusting that it will unfold as it's supposed to. A couple of bourbon industry questions for you. What do you wish the general public understood about bourbon?
I think we're getting there, but it's not your grandpa's drink. It's not a man's drink. There's no right or wrong way to drink it. Drink what you like. That's kind of been my shtick since day one, is like, there's really no judgment. Now you can kind of tease. I'm not saying you can't tease a little bit because that's always fun, right?
Well, you said it right here in the magazine that there's a lot of sacrilege around keeping things pure. Drink what you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's for anybody interested, that's in the American Whiskey May 2023 issue. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm holding fast to that for sure. Let's see. I think we have an educated consumer now, and there are people who come to the bar with expectations. So if you know exactly what you want, don't be afraid to ask your bartender for it. I think some of the biggest frustrations that I hear bartenders have, not just from my team, but just from, consumers in general, maybe from some of the meme accounts that are hospitality and bartender driven, it's like the guy walks up to the bar and orders an old fashioned, and the bartender makes their house old fashioned, and then he's like, that's not it. It's like, well, what did you want? Because you didn't ask about what our old fashioned was like, and you didn't tell us what you wanted. So it's one of those things where the craft cocktail scene has become something that is expected now. You can go to any city in the country and find at least one bar or restaurant that's doing something kind of innovative or crafty, or even just like California style, fresh driven bartending. And so, yeah, just, if you know what you want, just communicate. Just talk to your bartender and then let them know. If you want a Wisconsin old fashioned made with your favorite bourbon, not brandy because we don't carry it, and you want your fruit muddled, we'll do it. You just got to let us know, and don't hate on us for giving you what we consider to be our own recipe. So it's one of those kind of things where I think people like to sometimes flaunt their knowledge, their limited knowledge, when you're like, there's so much more. There's people who know, and then people who don't know, they don't know kind of scenario here at work. So yeah, don't be mean to people who make your drinks.
You probably are the only person I could ask this question to. Do you know where this trend of muddling the fruit comes from versus the seemingly purest edition of an old fashioned that you don't muddle the fruit, you just express orange oil over it and call it a day?
Yeah, so for my research, and this is just me, I haven't read them all. I haven't read all the books. There's probably way more, educated people and myself who could maybe dive into this deeper. But from what I've From what I've read, the old fashioned is a style of drink. It was just a spirit, water, sugar, and bitters. And that was just known as an old fashioned style of drink because it helped clean up some of the crappier like liquors that were being produced at the time.
The bathtub whiskey that was being made. Yeah.
What's that?
The bathtub whiskey or the bathtub gin that was being made. And yeah.
Exactly. But from my understanding, like the whole muddling thing, that came from, so Pendennis Club has been often linked to coming up with the first old fashioned. The old fashioned has been around longer than the Pendennis Club, but they had a certain style. They had that muddling of the fruit. There's also that style up north with a lot of the Midwest upper clubs. They also muddle the fruit, and they might use a different spirit. Like I'm using Wisconsin as an example because that's where I grew up. They will use brandy instead of, whiskey. So yeah, I think it was just an evolution. The old fashioned is a very regional cocktail for many people. You can go and order one in Canada or Vermont, and they'll make theirs with rye whiskey and maple syrup. Like you just really don't know wherever you're at in the country. So it's always good to just inquire before you buy it, I guess, if you're really that into old fashions. But it's the easiest way to get into whiskey if you like whiskey but you can't drink it neat but you want to enjoy the flavors of it. The old fashioned is a really good cocktail to start with because you're just sweetening it up a little bit. You're not altering the inherent like flavor profile of the whiskey. You're just kind of softening the edges with the syrup, maybe a dash or two of bitters, and you proof it down also by stirring it or putting on ice so it becomes less in your face and more something you can sip on throughout an hour or so.
I love how you said it's not your grandpa's drink and it's not a man's drink. When I met my wife, she didn't like bourbon. She would say like, I don't like bourbon. I'm like, I don't know that that's true. Let's test that. And I would find a lower proof bourbon like a Basil Hayden or something. And like you said, the simple syrup, whatever kind of syrup you're using, and really for me, like a Luxardo cherry in there changes the drink. And it's not an old fashioned at that point. It's some bastardization with a cherry in it, sure. But it doesn't matter, right? Because I was like, if I can soften the edges of this, like you said, if I can take this proof down a little bit, if I can bring the flavor of the bourbon out instead of just the alcohol hitting you in perhaps like a Manhattan or something that's a little boozier, I can make this more approachable. And if it's more approachable, maybe she can get into it. And that's exactly how it went. And now last night, she's like, can you make me an old fashioned with Angel's Envy rye? Like, that sounds pretty good. Like, yeah, I can do that. So I do think that I equate it to something like sushi. You can say you don't like sushi, but there is a sushi out there for you, whether it's deep fried or it's got steak on top, or it is the rarest tuna you've ever seen on a tiny block of rice. Whatever, there is something out there for you. You just have to explore until you find it. And I think that's what you meant when you said we're getting there. Like bourbon's turning the corner on, its old stigmatized, boring booze in a glass with a rock in it, maybe. Is that your perception so far too, of like how things are evolving for it?
Yes, I mean, I would agree with that. When I moved here to Louisville in 2016, I was an outsider. I didn't drink whiskey. I mean, I had a few shots with friends, but I wasn't like a whiskey nerd. And getting the job at Heaven Hill was like, I had the skill as a bartender, but my palate was like a kindergartner, for lack of a better term. Please don't feed your kids alcohol. Disclaimer there. But my point is like, okay, they're tasking me. This is one of the biggest producers of bourbon in the country, and they're tasking me now to create a cocktail menu that appeals to 100,000 tourists a year. And I don't like whiskey. Like literally, that was like, oh shit, I bit off more than I could chew, kind of thing. And so I started developing cocktails that were approachable for that reason, because I myself didn't necessarily care for bourbon or whiskey. Like I just didn't have the palate for it. And, so kind of when it goes back to, trying, don't give up. You miss 100 of the shots you don't take, kind of thing. So I just kept exposing myself to it and listening to people explain it, and going to every educational seminar that I could. And, it took work. It took work to get there. And, I ended up finding a weird skill set in it. So now I'm like, okay, now that I'm confident, with the evolution of my career in whiskey, now it's kind of like my objective to help get, not train people, but to help, make them curious about it. Because if you can break down that wall of like a hard no, tell a really fun story about the drink or name it something fun, it's like, okay, they let their guard down a little bit. And all right, well, that sounds like I could maybe handle that. So let me try that one. And then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I like it.
I'm smiling because the last time I was in Watch Hill was probably 2, 3 weeks ago now. And some friends and I took them down there because they had not been yet. I'm like, guys, it's been a year. How have you not been yet? And these are all guys who appreciate good bourbon, and all kinds of good cocktails. And I was like, well, that's it. We're going. So we go down and we had a great night. Tried, I think, just about everything on the menu in terms of dinner and the food there, which is phenomenal, by the way. So it came to a point where it's like, all right, we got time for one last drink. What's it going to be? And I said, look, it's been almost exactly 10 years to the day since we had this 2015 edition. I know I'm being liberal on the 10 years, but it was a 2015 edition, Wild Turkey Masters Keep. And it was a little lower proof than normal. It was like 89 proof, versus like the 110 that they've been coming out at, 105 they've been coming out at. So it was really mellow, but this beautiful 17-year-old whiskey. And I was like, let's do a glass of that. So I didn't know it. The table next to us was listening to me talk about this to the bartender, or to the waiter, who was like, "Are you sure you want that one? Because that's that." I said, "Oh yeah, that's absolutely the one we want. There's a nostalgia to it. The three of us opened that exact bottle almost 10 years ago, like to the day, blah 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 blah." The table next to me had been listening the whole time, and they waited for us to get our glasses. We sat there for visual purposes, with our nose making love to this glass. Like we're just like diving into what it tastes like, and we're appreciating, and we're talking about the story about when we opened it on my friend's patio and blah, blah, blah. The table next to us ordered it too. And they pretty much polished off the bottle, which at first I was pissed. I was like, damn it, I shouldn't have let the secret out, like now people, there's only so many bottles of that 17-year-old going around, And at the same time, I was like, that's what this is all about, right? Mm-hmm. Is sharing an appreciation for something that would otherwise just be another whiskey in a bottle. But there's a story there, there's meaning there, there's art for sure. And then that's not even talking about the 17 years that it took to age it, to get it to the bottle, that then sat for almost 10 more years before we poured it that night. So when you describe sort of like evolution of people coming to terms with this isn't your grandpa's drink or just a man's drink, that's what I see, is that there's so much more appreciation, and it's perfect. Like why we're celebrating with this whiskey tonight, because there's so much room for art. The bottle, the style, the library card, the fact that, they talk for 230 years and 8 generations, this family's been working on what went into this bottle right here. That is a different level of experience than, hey, can I have a shot of something?
Exactly. No, I agree 100.
So let's do this. For everybody else that's been on the show, I've asked them, if you were a cocktail, what would your ingredients be, or like what would your parts be? Anything is fair game. And I'm asking you on the spot, so I don't expect it to be perfection. You might have to fight that tendency there. But what do you think?
I think it would be, one part sinner, one part saint. For sure. With a couple dashes of grace, maybe.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else in there?
No, we'll keep it simple. We'll stick with that.
All right. What would it be called?
How about the Devil's Advocate?
Oh. I thought you were going to say drinkable art when you mentioned that earlier. I was like, but the devil's advocate is way more fun.
It is fun because I always feel like the devil isn't necessarily the devil as I think of him. It's more of that like that voice in my head that says, you know, what if you take it this direction? Or, you know, there's like a little goblin inside of me that like, you know, let's just push the boundaries a little bit. And sometimes you have to kind of like be your own advocate in that sense. And even if no one else believes in your vision, or even if no one else believes in, doesn't support you in whatever you're doing because it doesn't make any sense to them, like just keep playing devil's advocate and think about, if you're not the devil's advocate, also I like to think about, you know, thinking about another perspective on whatever it is you're doing. So it could be any perspective really, but just trying to look at things from a different angle. And I think that's where you have your breakthroughs, if in art or in anything. If you create or you're building something, I feel like you have to look at it. You have to get out of your own way and look at it from another perspective. And sometimes that perspective feels or reads like someone that is completely outside of who you know as your person, right? Like, where did that come from? Yeah. You know, and that kind of thing. So that's why I think that would be my name. I'm not really evil. I swear.
Before we wrap up though, how's this whiskey leaving you here?
I'm feeling pretty good. I do enjoy it. You are the first that I've shared this with. I will always remember.
I'm going to write on my card before we get finished here too, because I just think that's such a cool way to, like, even, you know, this is a type of bottle you're probably going to park somewhere around your house because it's a showpiece. It's a conversation piece for sure. If you're listening to this on a podcast and not watching the show, you can click on the link in the show notes, or you can just Google Hemingway Rye. You'll see it right away. You'll see exactly what we're talking about in terms of the style of the bottle, the care that went into it. Thank you so much, everybody at Hemingway Whiskey for the opportunity here. So let's say, Karla, the people are listening, they're watching, and they're like, I want to support her. I want to cheer her on. I just want to follow what she's up to. I want to see these cocktails that she's making. How do they either stay in touch with you or follow you online?
My Instagram handle is whiskey_wanderlush. And I'm on LinkedIn too. I believe it's Green Karla J, if I remember correctly. I'm not too keen on social media these days that much, even though I probably should be more involved, but that's really where I post the most.
We'll put a link in the show notes to make it easy for everybody. How about that? So they can just scroll down, click it, make it easy. Karla, any last thoughts, anything on your heart you want to share before we go?
Oh, no, I just really appreciate you and your invitation on this, and thank you for being you and for this awesome show. And hope you come down to Watch Hill and have a few more of the new summer cocktails.
That's what I was just getting ready to say, is I'm sure I'll see you in a couple days at some point.
Yes, please come on down.
Well, thank you so much. For everybody listening, do us a favor, share this with a friend who needs to hear, you know, Karla's wisdom, her experience, the leadership lessons. That was a cool turn. I didn't expect to go there, and it was just right there, plain as day. And then also, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to the podcast so you never miss one of the interviews that's coming out. Just hit subscribe. And if you're really feeling feisty after a glass of this whiskey, leave us a review and let us know what you think of the show. And by the way, the more positive reviews we get, the better guests we can book. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for your help. Karla, thank you so much for the time. Tell Dave I said hi. Tell the puppy I said hey there. And for everybody else, we'll catch you on the next episode of Bourbon and Breakthroughs.
Thank you.